4-part series. We're finally coming to an end, almost. It used to be only like a 5-week series. Now it's been like 3.5 months or more, 5 months. I think.
A year.
I lost count.
But it's all about
okay.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the point. The point is that the more that we're here and the more that we're listening to these concepts here, the more that we realize things that these concepts are telling us, the better chance there is of that conceptual stuff going down into our spirits and taking action. Yeah, that's the hope. There's no, we say a timeline, yes, but there is no strict schedule for that timeline. That's what we do here.
And if you're here for the first time, some people like to ask, well, is this like how many steps, how many weeks, how does it go? We're actually, imagine a circle, right? And you arrive here, that's when your cycle begins. And it'll go around, and then you'll come back to the first class you came, and it's not like, hey, I completed the cycle, you move on to no, you keep going, but every time you have the second time you have the first class, it's gonna feel completely new, because after a year, you grow, we all grow, right?
No diplomas.
Right.
No diplomas here,
Only stars.
none of us are graduated.
Only stickers.
Only stickers when you actually take a step to do the stuff you are trying to do. But
And within that circle, we are toward the end. Yeah? The maturity stage is the end of the circle, and we've been spending how many weeks on that?
5
Who knows?
months.
Yeah, 5 months. But it is the best, for me, personally speaking, it is the most important part for me, because it has taught me to see where I have been stuck in my life, in the stages of maturity, you know, and where we had, and we're gonna talk about this today, where we've been doing all these things that society tells us to do, the expectations that we have, broad expectations. I learned that in Principles of Sociology in the 70s, you know? We have a lot of broad expectations here, personally speaking, because they're self-imposed. This is what we grew up with. Yeah? So we are mature in some areas there, but we have become very mature on our true self, that person that is in there that needed to be put aside so that we could go ahead and fulfill those broad expectations. Yeah? So we'll be talking about that a lot. And Emmanuel, if you want to put that first slide. No, the second one, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, wait.
Oh, wait, no,
Go back,
first.
yeah. This is us, no, because people see us and how do they look so together and perfect? Asked the boy. There's a lot of frantic paddling going underneath.
Said the horse.
Yeah. Like,
No, but see, that's for
they're
example,
talking about the swans.
those two swans are Gigi and I, that when I started telling you about that, we're married and we live life together, and that's what we might look like to people who don't know us. But underneath there's a lot of frantic paddling going on.
And
Yeah?
there's a lot of frantic paddling underneath each of you.
There's a lot of
That's
work,
right.
you know,
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
and if we think that marriage is about just looking like the swans, you got it wrong, pal. It ain't, you know?
So you can go back to it.
So,
The truth.
so anyways, these are the stages of emotional maturity that we've been discussing over the past few months, yeah? Oh, Pedro, good to see you, man. Yeah. So the infant stage is where we're all selfish and we're entitled to be selfish because we really don't know better, right? Our parents are taking care of us, they're giving us everything that we need, and that's how we grow up as a child. We grow up very selfish, and this is in the stage in which we learn, and we learn how to do difficult things, yeah? They start weaning us out, we already learn how to walk, we already learn how to do a lot of things that we're supposed to continue to do on, to move on to the second stage, which is to the third stage, which is adult.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Yes.
If you're thinking of someone who behaves like an infant, or you behave like a child,
Think about your boss
or your spouse,
or your spouse.
maybe you got stuck in that area, in some areas of your life in that age, right? That's what we've been doing with the maturity cycle, is to see, okay, I may be really good at some areas of my life, like I'm responsible, I have a job, I pay my bills, but then when I don't get what I want at home, I throw a tantrum. That means that you have been stuck in that childhood area in something happened. And then the question is, what happened in your childhood stage between the ages 5 to 12 that you're still acting that way?
So it doesn't mean that the child stage is what happens between 5 and 12 years old. It is supposed to happen, but it continues to happen in our lives up to present time. We still have things that we didn't overcome as a child during that stage, yeah? So the next stage is adult stage. We are starting to care for ourselves and others. This is when we start doing well in business, then we find a girlfriend, we get married, right? We form a family, and we learn the concept of mutuality, right? And what is mutuality? No. There. The tendency of relationship partners to think of themselves as members of a committed relationship rather than as distinct individuals.
So the adult already knows that there's someone else. It's not all about you.
And you're supposed to let go of the ball and chain concept of marriage, right? I mean, if you have the ball and chain concept of a marriage, then you're not thinking in terms of mutuality.
What's the ball and chain?
Ball and chain, like when you go to jail, they put a chain and a big ball, and you have to carry that weight, carry that burden all along. I'm married, you know?
Yeah.
And talking about like the adult already knows that it's not all about themselves. There's other people to take care of. There's other people to do life with. And mutuality is this. I give and I take, and I give, and the other person gives and takes. And we were actually talking about that this morning. In generosity, when someone is generous with you, you take, but there's a moment where you also give, because it becomes mutual, right? But if you are only taking, and it's all me, what is it telling you? Where are you stuck? In the child, and maybe also in the infant stage, right? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
That's good.
And we actually love, as in the parent stage, without expecting anything in return, right?
Can you guys say that out loud? Love without expecting anything in return.
How many of you love that way?
Yeah, I'm trying very.
I've learned to.
Anne is healed.
Very voluntarily.
But you're doing it now, you're putting it into practice.
We're putting it into practice. Yeah.
But how
You
many
get
times
to.
have you thought with your children, after everything I've done? I mean, I've thought of that.
Right.
After everything I've done, you can't even ask me, I want a glass of water? Man, I'm expecting something in return.
Don't embarrass the family.
After everything I've done for Giorgio, how come he can't do this? I'm expecting something in return.
And I'm always doing everything you want. How come you cannot do one thing for me? Does that sound familiar? Just asking you for one thing. You know, we're victims, the guys, you know? One thing. That's it.
Or the women, we tell the husbands, you had one job. You had one job, guys.
Take out the
Dude,
garbage.
take out the freaking garbage. Let's make it real.
Never do.
Giorgio does take out the garbage.
I don't change the light bulbs though.
No. But like you said, that's a whole other conversation.
That's right. And then the elder stage, and we haven't seen that yet. We will. Elder is associated with geriatric, right? The elder. It's an elder statement. No? And it's not about good with canes, yeah? It's just about real maturity, where you can actually foster to a whole community based on your experiences as a healthy adult. Yeah.
And we're gonna get into that in a few weeks. We're gonna talk about the elder stage. And the sad part of this maturity cycle is that everybody grows old. Sorry, I drank water and it went through the wrong way. Okay. It's not COVID.
I didn't know it was sad to grow old.
No, because people grow old. Wait,
No, I know.
Who said
everybody, I haven't finished the statement.
You said that?
Everybody grows old, but not everybody grows up. And just picture for a moment one of your family reunions when you were younger. What were your adults in the house, in a family reunion, Thanksgiving, parties, whatever, what were they behaving like?
Kids.
Like kids. I'm not talking about having fun. Having fun, we should all learn to have fun. In fact, having fun is part of being mature.
Yes.
Having a childlike demeanor is something that is beautiful. But behaving like a child when you're a 60-year-old man, a 40-year-old man, woman, it isn't, right? So yes, we want to become elders, but you could be an elder in your 40s. You could be an elder, you could be stuck in a child stage in your 60s. So I just wanted to, like, we're all trying to get to the elder stage well, so that we can be an asset to the community, not in the community. Sorry.
Trainer.
Without the set.
Yes, without the set.
Right.
Anything else about maturity thing?
No,
Okay,
I mean, we can be here again for another, 2 hours talking about maturity, but no,
okay.
go on.
Okay.
Alright,
So back in 2019,
Huh?
That's a mature answer.
that's a
thank
mature
you.
answer. Thank you. Mimi. Back in 2019, we did this class for the first time, and then COVID hit, and then the cycle was stopped, and then we started again about a year ago. So this is the second time we give this class, and the reason why we're saying that is because it's still unfolding as we're teaching it. Stuff is still coming up. And we realize that there's a common thread in all the different stages that we all have to experience, that unless we yield to this well, in a healthy way, we're never going to become a healthy elder. And that is authority and submission. And those are words that are like, like, it's like the word sin.
Especially submission.
Especially.
I mean, at least among guys, I mean, somebody told me, you must submit.
Yeah.
Us too.
Right.
And even for me as a
Yeah.
woman, I come from a family.
Oh, yeah, to us.
Yeah.
Submit to your husband.
Submit to your husbands. I come from a family of very strong women. I have a very special guest here, Chumi. She's my aunt. Those who don't know her, she's right here. She's in the house. We come from a matriarchy of what we were told of strong women. But it's not strong women, it's strong women with an attitude,
Los madrigales.
It seems like Los Madrigal, if you haven't seen Encanto, we were Los Madrigal. In fact, Chumi and I always have this discussion because we always say in my family, the Lebanese side the last name is Buraje, and we would always say, es que somos las Buraje.
Wow, that's actually like.
Yeah, las Buraje, somos las Buraje. This is happening porque somos Buraje, like we're so proud of it. But it's not a healthy pride.
But in the bad thing, you go, it's happening because we're
Of course, it's Buraje. It's not a healthy pride. It was a very dysfunctional pride that came from the root of unhealthy authority and unhealthy submission. And I think as you hear our stories, you can start piecing together what was your story, what did submission and authority look like in your house? And do you even cringe with the word authority? Or women or men, do you cringe with the word submission? Like I remember, I still have issues with submitting to Giorgio in some areas. And that sounds very religious. I don't like submitting because I don't trust most people. And I will submit as long as I trust you, but if you break my trust, I will pretend that I'm submitting, but I'm not gonna submit. Porque soy una burache.
And it happened last
She's
night.
rolling her eyes. I love it.
But it happened last night.
Yes, it did.
It happened last night. I'm gonna give you,
I'm submitting
I'm
and
gonna
saying
tell you
yes.
exactly what happened. And we've been at this
you
for,
sure?
yeah, of course I'm sure. We've been at this for almost 12 years, huh?
Plus.
And this stuff happened last night. So this, I mean, I don't have a teaching gene. I don't. I speak through my testimony, right? And this is how I stand up here and I tell you the things that we all learn from each other. So because of the content that you're going to hear in this class today, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to say that really overwhelms me, yeah? Because it's tough. Because I grew up in a family that I thought was the perfect family, I grew up privileged and we had not a worry. But, as I grew and as I moved on in my life, I realized when I arrived here, especially at the end of my rope, that there were a lot of things that I didn't know were taking place in my family that were not kosher, that were not right, And I always felt that I didn't have any standing to say anything wrong about my family because they've done well. And they did do well for a long time for many things in many areas. But the area where I got stuck is where they didn't do well. Why? Because they didn't know better, not because they didn't want to give it to us. And my brother is here, and we both are from the same line, and we are very different from each other, but we have that thread of understanding that there's a lot of gratitude for the way that we grew up. However, there's a lot of things that weighed up on me, and when I read it, it brings all these emotions back to my childhood, you know? So being here, and I forgot
The thread is that
the
something
thread.
happened between us, but
Right, so what happened last night,
that I didn't
and I'm
submit.
bringing up dirty laundry, is not dirty laundry, it's just anecdotal stuff that makes us be aware of how we make mistakes on a daily basis, yeah? So standing here, I get emotional, and I tell Gigi, you know, when I am getting emotional in the class, you are the one that actually gets me the most, you know? You understand what's going on in me almost 100%, and you cue up on it, you know? And she knows what's going on. So I get overwhelmed and I get choked up and I stay here and I put pause on my own, you know, life for a moment. And Gigi looks at me sometimes and she goes, out of compassion, out of empathy, right? It's a loving gesture. And I said to her, when this happens and I hear you go, I lose my shit. Yeah, I lose it.
Listen to this, Lucky.
I lose it. I am really, I don't know, it becomes even worse, you know?
What do you mean you lose it?
He
I
starts
lose it, I
crying.
start crying even more.
Is that true?
Yeah?
That's good.
So
Yeah,
last night,
Yeah, but I need to, you know, gather myself and continue. So when I'm trying to gather myself and I hear the empathy from Gigi, understanding where I'm at, it delays the whole process. And I know that we have weeks to do this, that's not the point. The point is that I need to be actually held up by the hand and just let me be at that moment. So I asked her,
can you please don't make,
can you please be aware of your so that, you know,
I can contain my
you
crying.
know, like, not so much. You know?
Not so much, not so much.
Yeah.
But why does that sound triggering?
Huh?
Who did that?
My mom,
Oh,
yeah?
why your mother?
Yeah, she was the tenderest person I ever met.
Oh.
You know, and she had this extreme, and I was telling Gigi every single night she would spend time bedside with my brother and I. Equal time. Yeah, equal time. It felt that way. No, it didn't feel that way. I felt like she was spending more time with him, but it was, right?
He wasn't the favorite?
My things were.
Who was the favorite? Over the whole kind of work.
But it's
When you have brothers and fathers and mothers and children in the room, it's a great group.
Yeah.
But listen to, so Giorgio is telling me, kindly, can you please,
I mean, was that a kind way of approaching the subject?
he's asking for
You
what
would
he
think?
needs.
Yeah, I'm asking for something, but I'm also validating the way that Gigi does things for me and the way that she actually empathizes with my emotions. But I'm asking her, please. Do you mind continuing what happened?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I said, and after I said that, which was, I was triggered, and I'll explain why, after I tell you what happened. I said, okay, if that's what you need. Now, I think
Looking like
he's not asking, that didn't look like, well, I should have just left it at, okay, I'll do that for you. That's it. That's healthy submission. From a friend to friend, spouse. You're asking me for something, that's it. He's not asking me for my opinion. But because I was triggered, and he doesn't know this, I had to give him my opinion. Does that make sense? A lot of us give our opinion. I give my opinion to Lucky all the time. And he gets triggered. Ask why, Lucky. But I'm always triggered and I have to give my opinion because why? Well, let me tell you what I told her. I said, you know, there's nothing wrong with showing emotion because we're trying to be real. He didn't need, he didn't
If
need to
you
hear
see me
that.
here before up here, you know that I have no problems with emotion.
Or being real. And then I added another spoonful of sugar, right? And I said, there's no difference, like you're kind of manipulating your emotions and pretending that everything's fine when the true emotion is that you're crying. And there is some truth to that, but I said,
Which is what?
I think we've been
You said.
to churches when we've seen the pastor do 3 sermons, and in the first sermon he cries at a certain moment, and in the second sermon he cries, and the third sermon he cries, and we both went like, wow, those tears were fake, you know? I said, also not crying when it's coming spontaneously for me is like we're being fake.
I used to do the sermon for the pastor, the simultaneous translation for the pastor. So all 4 services, at the same time, I saw him queued up and cry at the same exact point of the sermon. So it's like,
And you cry in Spanish?
I sniffed in Spanish.
Christ is Spanish. Yeah.
But you see,
Sounds louder, Lucky, it's louder.
but I see some of you like mine, although it sounds very logical what I'm saying, that's not the point. Giorgio was asking you for something, that's it. Now, that's why I'm saying submission for me is hard. Submission means also giving to the other person that you're giving authority at a certain moment what they ask for. Now, let's bring it back to me. Why was I triggered? Because as kind as Giorgio was talking to me, my authority figure when I was little sounded just like that. Please don't show your emotion. Please don't show that you're sad. And if I showed something that wasn't what my mom wanted me to show, I got the look. So when Giorgio kindly tells me, don't go, that's for me, sounds, smells like giving me the look. Don't be yourself, pretend. It's not what he's asking me. But you see, my trigger pushes out unhealthy pretense submission. So I have a hard time.
Quick question. Had Giorgio said, Gigi, please don't do because this is how it makes me feel.
He did.
He explained why, and
Yeah.
you're still, okay.
Yeah, because this is where I should have just said,
But I did more than that. I validated every single time that
yeah,
she
you're
did that.
tender, you're doing
You know?
it, like he was
Okay,
very
no.
kind.
I did more than that. I went the extra mile, preparing,
But you see,
healthy authority. We're gonna learn about that today. Healthy authority. I'm trying my best to give out healthy authority, and it just backfires.
Giorgio, you did that elaborately and compassionately because you knew where
Yes.
she is.
Yeah,
And so that was
Yeah.
that's the other part of it.
yeah. I didn't go like, you know how you always do this? Please don't. No.
Okay.
but so
Yeah.
it's a dance. And sometimes I'm so glad you brought this up, Giorgio, because this isn't the nitty-gritty and the daily stuff of the day-to-day that we think we got it all right, it's all fine, nothing's happening. I don't have a problem with authority, but I give my opinion all the time. Anyway, yeah.
No, and we think this is just to show not to bring out dirty laundry for the sake of bringing it up, you know?
And I mean,
It's for all of us to understand that life happens daily. God happens daily. You know, God shows up in our daily life all the time, and we choose not to listen to him. We choose not to acknowledge him. We choose to, let our pride carry us on. Yeah?
so we notice that there's.
So
this
her
comment
reaction
there.
to me could have been me being triggered too, right? Because she went, right? And we're walking the dog, and all of a sudden silence. You could hear the dog salivating, And yeah,
Poor Joey,
yeah.
yeah.
Where's the dog? Where's the dog?
He's at home with sister.
With sister. So we notice this thread of how much we really need to pay attention to how we submit and who taught us to submit. And the word that is in between submission and authority is obedience, and we hate that word. Because it sounds like you need to be obedient, right? What if I want to do what I want to do? I'm an adult. Well, an adult is obedient. Anyway, some of us have had really unhealthy authority role models. Some of us have been taught to submit in very unhealthy ways. We have been forced, we have been manipulated, we have been tricked into submission. Some of us have had to pretend to submit.
We have been belted into submission.
Or we built others.
Yeah. Or chancleta. No, la varita, la chancleta, the whatever, name it, the belt, the phone, words. What?
Wooden spoon.
Wooden spoon, yeah,
Passive aggressiveness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some of us have had to pretend to submit. Sure, I'll do it. Sure, no problem. I mean, start thinking, where have you pretended to submit in your life when you were little? Many of us have also misused authority ourselves upon others. And this really, like, if we don't see this part, if we only say what people did to us, you're gonna get stuck in a victim mentality. And we do have to see what they did to us. But what are we doing? How are we coercing, forcing, manipulating people to do what we want them to do? Do we remove love? No? Anyway, we're gonna be talking more about that. So the big idea, also, just to bring it up to the whole topic of God that Giorgio was saying. We talk in church and here about loving God and trusting God, right? And I don't want to sound religious, but it's very difficult to trust a God as a father figure when you have never, ever experienced healthy authority on earth. It's almost impossible. If you think that you're doing a good job, good, but take a look at yourself really. Have you really been a healthy leader, a healthy authoritarian? And have you been a real trustworthy person who has submitted to the will of another, whether it's your spouse, at your job, your boss, your parents, your mentor, your pastor, your priest? Have you really? That you really trusted them and done what they've asked you to do willfully? Most of us haven't. So the reason why we're in this class is because if we haven't, well, we can still fix it. There's still time. The big idea for today is the next slide. Giorgio, you want to read the big
No,
idea?
go ahead, you read it.
Okay. We're going to learn that unhealthy authority leads to unhealthy submission. Healthy authority leads to healthy submission. Easy, right?
Sounds almost like duh, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of,
So
we
how
have-
come
we
we're not
have-
getting it?
yeah. And unhealthy leadership forces others into obedience. But healthy leadership actually inspires others to follow in willful obedience.
And that is all linked. I don't know if you remember me talking about developing the heart of sonship. It's all linked to that, you know? When we go into willful obedience, when we're doing the right thing because we want to. We're developing the heart that wants to do the right thing, period, yeah? Not because we have to.
Giorgio, yeah, so that's the whole teaching on the orphan house. Yeah?
Right.
We can't hear you.
Orphans cannot submit.
Did you guys hear that? Orphans cannot submit.
Sons and daughters will submit.
True sons and
True
daughters,
sons and
yeah.
daughters.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
talking about faith.
Correct, right. Thank you, Lucky.
Thank you, Lucky, for giving me a class.
Do you
So,
want to pray for people?
already, okay.
No, and I think Gigi, earlier you quoted the scripture verse, and I have a real problem with that scripture verse.
We can't hear you, Lucky.
Oh,
Sorry, we do need the
There's
microphone.
So I was saying I have a real problem with that scripture verse. It's been abused over and over again, and you only quoted half of it, and it's like, wives submit, and I hate that. Wives are not supposed to submit. But the first thing was, Who was that?
Desmond.
Oh, thank you, Desmond. Thank you.
The first thing is the most important.
No. The first word, and everybody, the whole church has abused that, well, the whole church, most of the church. It's husbands, love your wives the way that Christ loved the church, that he lays down his life for her. And then after that comes the thing, and there's a clause there in original text. If husbands are loving the wives the way that Christ loves the church, that he lays down his life for her. And I don't mean take a bullet, I mean putting her needs above your own. That's love, not lust. Then wives, then you submit to those kinds of husbands, because then he's the house binder, and he's the husband, and he's gonna bind up the whole house in the love of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost.
Willful submission.
But you see, a lot of us didn't see that with our parents. First, did we see our mothers and our fathers having that kind of relationship?
No.
Did we see a father laying down his life for his wife? I'm in groups and I hear the stories. Some of us have seen our mothers being beat up by the fathers. Some of us have been sexually abused by the fathers. Some of us have been with mothers, have been abandoned by the father. So no wonder it's a mess, right? But if we also go by life without acknowledging that those things actually happened and looking at it, because it's too painful to look at, it's not gonna disappear, it's just gonna grow. It's like fungus in the dark, it grows. But we bring it to the light, we talk about it, not to stay stuck in the pain, but to see the pain. Yeah.
Giorgio, can I share your story a little bit?
Sure, I was gonna do that, but
Oh, no, but just this part, maybe, you know.
Go ahead, go ahead.
You know, the thing is, like, when I first met Giorgio, for the first 3 hours in Dunkin' Donuts, is
Oh,
tell me about your family. No, fantastic, great, no problem, great.
Venezuela surfing boat.
And then after 2, 3, 4 hours, when there was trust, or it got real a bit, and he sat in the restaurant, can I share this?
go ahead.
Because your brother's here now. And he said, I saw my mother crying one. Oh, okay. And then he says, I don't remember this part not clear. I think you said, I don't know. If your brother wasn't here when you said that. I think you saw some kind of abuse, I don't know, it was shouting, screaming, yelling, hitting, I forget, but you saw your mother crying, and it was like.
Well, the crying was because, you know, a lot of these memories are not so much about the actual crime, they're about what was happening while the crime was taking place. And I remember my mother, she painted, and she was a housewife, but she had a little studio and she painted, and she would go all over the place in Caracas, you know, to places, and she would meet other painters as well, you know, and they would be talking, socializing. It was beautiful to see, and I would hang out with my mom a lot. You will see that my mom was the love of my life, you know, and she was it for me. So, but anyways, I would see my mom crying in her studio, and I would go in without saying a word because I was young. I didn't know what to say. I was in 5th grade, you know, and I didn't know what to say. So I would just go in, and she would look at me, and she would just bawl, and she would just hold me while I'm bawling. You know, it's just like, and I'm getting goosebumps because.
How old were you?
5th grade, I don't know. I remember 5th grade because that's when we moved to the house. I was in 5th grade, we moved up to the other house, yeah? So you know, it was, that's, you know, those type of things. And I really didn't have much memories of that sort, you know? My memories were always based on all the good things that I had experienced as a member of my father's and my mother's cultivation.
Well, that's just self-defense mechanism.
Right. I mean, today I've learned that, but then I said, there's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with my family. But yet I went up to Lucky and I didn't know him. I had only seen him, you've heard my story before, and I've only seen him a couple of times before. And when I was in the worst possible moment of my life, I didn't think of calling anybody. Not my brother, not my good friends, not, he came up, you know? And partly because he was safe, because he didn't know me very well, and I figured, what the heck, what is he gonna do? You know? But the other part was, there was no intimacy with anybody. I was, you know, looking back, that's what comes back to me. Man, I called a total stranger to help me in my worst day of my life. I didn't call anyone who I had a relationship with, you know? So that's telling. That's telling. So something was wrong with my family, yeah? We gave a really nice appearance to the outside world, but behind closed doors, there was a totally different story going on. And it's not a hell, you know, always screaming, always yelling, but there was attention, you know? I think on Thursday night, someone said, you know, that when the father came into the house, everyone scrammed like roaches, you know? And they went into the room. What was it? Was that you, Gilbert, who said it?
No.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
You. Who?
Me.
You,
And
yeah.
If I can just say something too, that
Microphone.
I could, well, when she gets here, my thoughts come. But
Hold it.
in the,
Keep talking, keep talking.
no, I was just gonna say that it's important to remember that in the absence of memory, our imaginations fill in the gaps. I said that on Thursday too, because we create this fantasy of what our families should have been like, but when the reality starts to surge up, at a very young age, we have learned to cope by creating the fantasy of what it was not. And these kind of things, these memories, they tend to pop up, you know, when people like Lockie kind of guide you there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Roger. And yeah, and that was it, you know? That was exactly it. When my father, we used to live in a house in a cul-de-sac, and we could see and hear my father arriving. So we would be outside playing, and he would honk the door so that the maid could come in and open the garage door for him to just race in, because he was just like speeding like a maniac, even going into the garage, you know? It's like, what's up, you know? But as soon as we heard the honk, we would scram, or we would like, okay, you know, we gotta show up. There was at least me, I don't know about him, you know, my brother, but I would scram. I would go into my room, I would open a book, you know, pretend that I was studying, yeah, making sure that I was nice and proper, you know?
How many people here did that when you were little? Your parents got home with like uneasy feeling.
I still leave books open.
You still leave books open.
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Oh, you do?
I do.
Yeah. And you know, I do that today, but it's not by leaving books open, but I said, Gigi, you know what I did today? All this of meaningless things, you know?
Yeah, but did you do this? No.
Yeah. But, you're focusing on the negative, you know? That's being manipulated.
That was
That's
last night.
unhealthy authority going on right there. So why are you talking about the one thing I didn't do? I cleaned the toilet, I looked at the dog, and, you know.
I ate something.
Yeah.
Guys, this
I
is all
drank.
real, but also for you to remember where you do it.
Where is your looking at the dog part at in your life, in your daily life, in your daily existence? What is it that you use as an excuse for not doing anything? Yeah? That's
When I started getting healing, Giovanna tells the stories. Giovanna would be with the kids in the kitchen, and the minute I came home, all my kids would go to their rooms. I thought, there's nothing wrong with that. They should do that. That's all. I thought that was good. Oh,
discipline. Discipline.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got a lot of
it's bad.
discipline.
You respect.
Right.
Yeah.
Children should be seen and not heard. You all disappear in your room and do your own thing. But don't play with Nintendo and don't watch TV. And if you're a Christian, don't do what? Pokemon. But do anything else you want in your room, but make sure you scatter and disappear, right? I did that to my kids.
Twiddle your
Be
fingers.
careful, yeah? That's all. I just want to say I'm guilty.
And when I was little, I remember, because it's not just the father coming in, but I've shared this story before. my mom, one night, and my stepfather were gone. And I was 11 years old, about transitioning of homes. And my mom was nowhere to be found, there's no cell phones, I don't know where she's at, and I'm thinking something bad happened. And I'm by the window thinking something horribly wrong happened, and I'm crying and crying and crying. And then I saw the lights of the car turning in, and then I felt panic. But the panic was because she was gonna see that I was crying.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot show that I was worried because she's gonna kill me. Can you imagine that? So it's not just the authoritative father like being aggressive, but it's that emotional abuse of like, don't even dare show me that you're not well because I don't need any victim in this house. Okay, anyway, what is submission? Giorgio,
I think we just defined it, didn't we?
what does submission mean?
It says here that it is the action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or to the will or authority of another person.
That means putting somebody else's needs before yours. So when,
Not because you want to, but because you have to. Yeah? Yeah. I mean, submission. Not healthy submission or unhealthy submission. Submission. You know, even in the business world, right? You have to submit a proposal. The proposal has specific line items, right? That you have to fill in as per. And if you don't do it, you probably don't get paid attention to it, right? Your request for proposal will be thrown out the window because you just didn't do it right? So you have to follow specific guidelines in submission, right?
even submitting, I was talking to a friend this morning, if you're invited to a party and you're supposed to RSVP, you are yielding to the request of another, and they have authority over that party because they're the ones planning it, right? We think authority is only this person up there. They're inviting you, they have a guideline, and you don't RSVP. And then you get upset because you didn't RSVP and then there's no place for you. Or there's no food. So even in the smallest things, so we need to submit to somebody else, but when we submit to somebody else's request, that's submission. Now, parents and adults know how to do this, supposedly. Children and infants don't know how to do it. That's why they need parents and healthy adults in a community to teach them and guide them.
So, with the superior force,
Microphone.
Yeah, I feel, I guess, like a little confused with the word superior force, because even like within, like you said, the mutuality of a marriage, for relationship, like, I guess it's like, I'm thinking like, you know, you're equal, and how is there a superior force in that? Is it like, if someone's asking, or you become that superior force, or what, like, can you share a little bit more on that?
So we spoke about mutuality, adults do mutuality, right? And when we know that this person is asking this from this person, in that moment, my obedience is to God, or a superior force, whatever you want to call, no? Because love is doing something for someone else
At the expense.
at the expense of my own self. Not a sacrifice.
yeah.
I'm gonna kill myself so you can live. That's,
The short end, I'm sorry.
it's doing what love tells us to do. So the superior force is love. The superior force would be God. Now, if somebody's in charge of something, like I said, the party, that person who's in charge becomes the superior force. And then maybe force is not the word, because superior force reckons with the divine, but also.
Which is part of it too, anyways.
But someone who's in charge, like, if you're telling me that for me to go to a dance class with you, I need to wear this, this, and that, and show up at this time, and I decide to do it my way, I'm not doing what you're telling me to do because I'm being disobedient, I'm not trusting what you're telling me, but in that case, you are the superior force, supposedly, but I don't like it. I want to be the one in charge, and
Example, superior force means accepting and understanding that we are not in charge. That's the short end of the stick, yeah? We are not in charge.
of
Example,
something.
you buy tickets to go to a concert, you have reserved tickets, and you go to your seat,
and you see it and you look ahead and there's like better seats out there. And you couldn't afford them, or you bought them too late, whatever. And you decide to walk and sit there. Really, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Somebody's gonna come in there with the tickets and you're gonna go through the embarrassment of someone coming in, the usher, saying, I'm sorry, so you have to get up, you have your own seats. And you walk and you sit back down where you belong. Who is in charge? You were trying to be in charge of your own condition by trying to sneak in and trying to sit somewhere that you didn't go and buy tickets for, but you thought it's free, no one is sitting there, I'm gonna sit here. And I see it all the time when I go to concerts, you know, the guy that goes all the way down to the first row, and you see him. Because I'm in the bleachers way back there, you know, looking, and I see everyone on the floor, and I'm thinking, I wish I was there, you know? It's okay to wish that I were there, but I'm not going to go there because that's not my place right now. I'm not in charge. If I were in charge, I would have gone to the very first row, 7th row, yeah? So I can see everybody.
What about we are supposed to have the healthy superior force?
Yeah, we're gonna be dividing the class now into
into
submission and authority.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I love you. Just gonna share some stuff.
How about asking for permission?
May I share some stuff?
I don't know what you're gonna share.
I know that's the thing. I'm like,
It's okay.
Just say yes and suck it up.
Submission.
I'll step outside.
Yeah, Giorgio will stand next to you and support you in case you want to pass out.
And go.
Actually, I'll be next. I'll be good.
That's not what I'm doing. So I won't go into particular like instances. Mostly just because it's trivial things, but it's eye-opening because I find myself at times in situations with Tuan where I feel like he's being rebellious. That's like the word that comes to my mind, you know, because I'm like, why are you doing that? That's like a question. Like nobody else is doing this, but I'm gonna go look where it says no trespassing, or I'm gonna go. You said this, but I'm gonna initially right away respond with no. There was a time where it became a joke, because I was trying to make light of the situation, but I would say something and he would always answer no. Like no was his immediate no. And it was super frustrating. And then he'd say something, but I was like, you know, I've prayed about it and we've talked about it, and oh my God, like, it's frustrating, you know? And like the littlest things, we were at a concert, this is the one that's coming to my mind. And people are either standing or sitting, and it's at a church, and then Tuan decided to sit where, like, it's not a sitting place, and put his feet where the chair is, and like little things like that.
Sat like this.
Yeah. And I'm like,
I used the chair differently. And I was on
and I just observe all these things, and I'm like, why is he doing that? You know, and
How about why is it bothering you?
yeah, and I did. We go there. I go there every time, and I have a strong, like I'm concerned about how other people are perceiving me and us. I care about that, and also I care about image a little too much. You know, where I've had to detach, because I'm like, oh, he's gonna look like a childish little boy, and I don't like that. Yeah, right.
But who looked like a childish little boy in your house? Who behaved like a childish?
My dad, always. I get embarrassed to be out with him, you know? And I recognize these things. And also I realized that he grew up in a home where he had no autonomy. He had no choice.
Unhealthy authority. So
Yeah.
I tried now, I'm doing things that I want to feel I have power and control.
For you.
So I'm gonna go and break the rules because in my house there were too many rules.
There are too many rules.
Too many rules, and I
He's in
couldn't
that
break them.
phase, yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Don't you love how the class is
Okay, wait.
So Tuan is in the terrible twos, and we love you in your terrible twos.
yeah.
He was never allowed to have the terrible twos.
He was never allowed to have.
Say, he didn't have a choice in anything.
Yeah.
So now anytime he has a choice or a say, he's just gonna like do it, you know?
And my default of saying no is me actually in the past couple of years of my getting older, has been just saying no to my parents. Like, no, I'm not gonna do this anymore. No, anything that they would tell me or say to me, it's like, that's my default response that I had to adopt to defend myself. And
Right now,
Right, yeah,
and how old are you now?
I'm 27.
Okay, so Tuan, as he's learning about what an adult starts looking like, right? He realizes when he was a little boy, he could not go through the no stage. So where's he stuck now? In the child stage. And he's learning how to do difficult things like saying no.
But just in that area, right?
Yeah, just in that, not in the whole thing, it's just that area of, I wanna do what I wanna do because I wanna experience autonomy. He just said it, that you are there and I am here, we're two different people. So he's transitioning from a child into an adult. Isn't that awesome?
That is.
Yes.
You can do whatever you want, Greg. Talk to that.
But I want to validate what Ashley was saying, because I did use that in an unhealthy way, because I saw that's what I needed to do for myself. But I projected that onto her in a very unhealthy way, and it made our relationship like dynamic kind of difficult. But when we talked about it more and we I understand like now I'm trying to build my own life and understand who I am, because I did latch on to Ashley in our relationship. And she was giving me my identity, and I was people pleasing her, making sure that I would, give her everything that she needed, but I wasn't sure who I was. I was confused about that.
Sounds like 2 dogs and no tick. I mean, 2 ticks and no dog. And also, 2 dogs and no tick. This is great.
So real quick, so I can give it to you from the other perspective. I've been a police officer for 30 years, right? And when I stopped people, and I started coming here, I started seeing all this. And there was one time where I stopped a guy, and before I even got to the window, and I just stood at the window and I said, "Your back tire's flat, man." And I'm walking back to the car and I'm laughing, and I turn around and I see he's grabbing the.
It's a tantrum. That's totally a tantrum.
I wanna be a cop.
You can have it.
And we got into Maurice and Lourdes, you had something to say too, no?
Yeah, I wanted to say that from on occasion, in my opinion, I think, is that we go just because we're working through these maturity states, it don't mean we won't fluctuate back and forth in a state. And that even as we are learning about them, that if we see someone in their child ego state, we need to know how to react to them in a healthy way, other than you act like a child, while you doing this or whatever, and make the situation even worse. Because that all of us that are in these type of classes or whatever, we need to learn how to be healthy in those things.
And we need to see it, we need to see it in action.
Absolutely. And sometimes what I really enjoy, and I was sharing with someone, I think maybe Thursday night, is that as a result of this, that when I'm even watching TV or movies and things, I can see where people are coming from, where they're with their, their child, their adult, their parent, or whatever, and we can recognize and use that as a tool, sometimes in our growth. But I think it's very, very critical when, and one thing that came to mind, and it doesn't have much to me now, but when I was married, and maybe my wife would say, "You're not wearing that, are you?" And that type of thing that may trigger to rebel. Yeah, this is what I'm wearing, you're not my mother or whatever, and then ruin the whole evening.
You're acting like my mother.
Yeah.
You won't go there,
Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to.
That sounds familiar.
That was very good.
So I'm sorry, we're gonna hold the questions for a moment. What makes us submit to someone else's authority? Like, what makes you submit to something? Like, just tell us.
Love.
Love, that's good. That should be. Respect. Power. Trust.
Fear.
Money.
Yeah. Money is a very quick.
Power.
We buy submission. People, and I know some of you hear your stories, you buy submission from people. And then what do you believe? They don't really love me. They're just doing what I'm telling them to do because I have the money. Right?
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole different kind of warmth because power, monetary power and socioeconomic status implies higher knowledge, right, in society where we live. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, but that's the way it is. That's the way the world works.
Like Lucky shares. He had tons of money, but he was behaving like a 5-year-old. But he
No,
had tons of
and
money.
it's not just him behaving, it's the perception of him. Whether he behaves like an adult or not, it's the perception that the money brings to him as an individual. You know, quick example, I used to do CNN in Spanish for Latin America for 10 years. And I used to do commentary for Formula One and for the automotive industry here in the US. So for 10 years, I was being beamed to millions of households across Latin America, right? I know my thing. I know my thing. And I did, 10 years, it's good, it's a nice feeling.
You were an authority about Formula One in
So I
CNN.
was an authority, right? So whenever people came up to me that had seen me in trade shows or art gallery events, like, they would come in and say, oh, I saw you in television, or you look familiar. You know, and as soon as they recognize you, it's like, oh yeah.
They want to hear everything he has to
No, I
say.
saw you on TV and you must be really matured because you're on TV.
No, you must know everything.
Yeah,
So
you must know
I
everything.
could say whatever, and they would go, oh, interesting. Huh? You know? Don't you do this sometimes? Like you put in, you're with friends and you're talking about the soccer match, and you're like, there's one guy that hasn't seen the match. You know, there's always a guy that did not see the match, right?
But who's
And you know
pretending?
it because he's going like, yeah, that's a good guy, you know? Right? So I always threw a fake incident, right?
Wow, that's messed up.
I know,
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
messed
messed
up.
up, but that was
Thank you, Ashley.
me.
Thank you.
And I remember that Serafin. Do you remember Serafini's play at the end? And I go, yeah, it was awesome. It's like, there is no Serafini, you know? Gotcha.
Una concha con público.
Right, you know.
But some of the things that make
Maybe
us
he knew
submit.
that there was no Serafini, but he wanted to play along with you because he didn't want
No, he was an idiot.
Uh,
That was me in my judgmental days, you know? That was me on my judgmental days.
Which, if you know Giorgio, we've said this before. When Giorgio started this process, he used to think that everyone was an idiot. I'm not kidding.
That's a Venezuelan thing.
Well,
No, it's not.
eso es como somos
But she lived there. She lived there. She went to Santa Rosa de Lima. Colegio Santa Rosa de Lima. So she knows. She knows, but shut up, man.
So he's come a long way. I do think you've come a long way. Just a few people are
Only
idiots.
some people are idiots.
Yeah, now most of the people are idiots,
No.
not everybody. I'm slowly getting there, you know?
Anybody here does that? Anybody here also thinks most people are jerks or idiots or whatever? That's us feeling superior. That's a feeling of superiority where we think we are in charge and in authority over others.
Right, that's our full self acting up on everybody else. That's me, that's my full self acting up on everybody
I
else.
know.
You know? Everybody, nobody, how many times do you meet somebody at a party or a reunion or at a restaurant and, you know, they say hello to you and then on the way home it's like, who was that idiot? You see him talk? I'm sorry, I'm getting off the subject.
We have a class about idiots.
Who acts like that?
A
My
child.
father,
Little children, your dad.
and my dad.
Little children.
Adults fighting like little children, there's something wrong with that picture.
So what is supposed to make, well, we heard about what makes us submit. You can put the next slide, Emmanuel. We submit out of fear, respect, obedience, conviction, knowledge of consequences. We forgot to say that. If I speed, I'm gonna get a ticket, or I could get into an accident. That's a consequence, right? Or I'll run into Roger. That's a consequence. If I eat this, I'm gonna feel this way. If I drink this, I'm gonna feel that way. There's consequences. Now, the problem with this is that we kind of understand better what submission is, but there are two types of submission. There's unhealthy submission and healthy submission. And all of that realm of submission affects the way we see God. And I think we have a big teaching on that area that I'm gonna move for maybe next week. But in a nutshell, so because I think we need to go into your testimony, and it's 10:30, so I don't know how we're gonna do this.
So we'll probably take the break and then do the testimony.
Yeah. So if we wanna learn how are we supposed to submit, and we have no good role models around us, because we're all kind of broken doing whatever we learned, or making it up as we go, we look at Jesus. And I just wanted to mention that because Jesus knew what he had to do. And there's a point in the Bible where he talks about when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying and he's actually sweating blood. Talk about not wanting to do something. And in that moment, he does voice it out, which for me is like, you know what? It's okay to say it. To me, when she was here teaching, she said it's important to just have someone that you can rant, that you could speak, that you could share anything. Sometimes you just need to rant. So when Jesus says, is there any way that this cup passes? Like, can we do it another way? But you know what? Let's do it your way, not my way. He's still yielding to the authority of someone that he trusts, that he knows. But it doesn't mean that he's loving what he has to do. So a lot of us, we want to love what we have to do. I'll do it if it feels right. It doesn't always feel right. I'll do it partially. I'll do it only when you're looking at me. So I think that if we always try to compare ourselves, let's try to compare, okay, so how are we supposed to do it? Trust that his way is better than mine. But I don't really understand this. So I come to people that can mentor me, that can give me that tangible understanding of what it is that God's asking me to do. And this is the beautiful part about his submission to him. He's not doing it to punish us. He's asking us to submit so that we can actually enjoy and feel loved and feel safe and feel trusted and be healthy. But we tie in submission to God like submission to other people. It's not the same.
How many of us are willing to do the hard thing? And by hard thing, I don't mean to say the complicated thing. Just the easy thing that we know we have to do, but we don't do.
Which is called dying to self.
Right.
We're not asking people to go to Africa.
No, I mean, like I said, God is in our everyday life.
Dying to
And
self.
what are those things that we know we have to do that we choose not to do constantly? Yeah? And the thing that I like, because I didn't grow up Christian, I grew up Catholic, which is kind of the same, isn't it? But
Yeah.
now we're going to go into the abyss of the differences between Christianity and Catholicism, you know?
It's an abyss.
It's such an abyss, you know? So anyways, I never knew anything about Christ too much, you know? I never knew much about God. It was up to my father and he would impart it to us. He was God. We would listen to him, you know? That was God. But then I saw that picture of Jesus, you know? And I'm not a Jesus freak, guys. I'm not. I live my daily life following the word and following this, trying to do it as much as I can within a day, within an hour, within a minute. Consciousness.
Try. We
Yeah.
try, that's all we can
Try,
do, we
try.
keep trying.
So, but when I saw that picture, it's like, man, that's awesome because that's human. That's humankind. That's human nature. And he came here supposedly, right? To show us how to live a life. So when he comes in and starts living the life, and he has to do one major thing that he knows he has to do, right? And he's complying in willful obedience to the Father. He knows what he has to do. He knows the pain that is going to entail completing what he has to do. Yet he worries, but what else is he doing? What else did he do? He complied, right?
Surrendered.
Surrender, willful surrender.
Hmm.
So,
I'm
so
sorry,
yeah.
but it wasn't a worry, really, it was just the contemplating and the pondering.
Yeah, but the human quality that he had was concern.
Of what he's gonna go through.
Look what it says in, look what it says in Proverbs.
He's not questioning the Father.
While he lived on earth anticipating death, Jesus cried out in pain and wept in sorrow as he offered up priestly prayers to God. That's my bottom line, you know, this guy, yeah. So, but anyways, we have
to go through the break.
come on,
I wanted to share something.
Quick, yes.
And it's for me, submission comes out, I have to submit to myself. Like, when I start doing the things that are hard, like he was saying, Giorgio was saying, and it's like, for example, I don't want to clean right now, and when I break my will and I clean, and when I submit myself to doing the hard things that I don't want to do, I start breaking that, that will, my will, and then it's easier for me to do the things that are hard when I have that discipline. So it starts with me, like for me, it has to start with me so that then I can submit to you, or I could submit to you or somebody else, but it has to start with me. That muscle grows, like, can I break my will right now? Can I do the hard thing right now? Pay my taxes on time, go to the doctor, in the first month of the year, or do the things that I know I have to do, that I will postpone, that I want to, put off because I don't like to do those things.
But we gotta go back to say why. It's not just make a plan and make a list and do the check, because if we fail until we heal the wound that was caused in our childhood, which I just wanna get through a list of things before we go to the break. Because if we don't do that path, what happens? And it's not just seeing what happened, it's asking, so what do I do with this now? Because if we just, this is what happened, and then nothing, something has to change, no?
Can I say something? No, I need to be careful, and we do this a lot. This wasn't the only place Jesus said it.
Right.
If you study the gospel, and I have examples which I'm not going to give you guys, but it's all over the gospel. He submitted to his mother, he submitted to his father, he submitted to the death of John the Baptist. I can go on. So be careful. We use this as the main thing. We think that's the only thing he submitted to. He submitted over and over again. That I just had to make that little remark because I get stuck when people.
After the break, we're gonna explain healthy and unhealthy submission and healthy and unhealthy authority, like really in depth. But it's important that we understand that submission is learned at home where we grew up. We know that, right? Emotionally healthy parents are supposed to teach us with emotional attunement to know where we're at. Understand, my son is going through the terrible twos, I'm gonna love him through it, right? My daughter is feeling abandoned, my son is feeling scared, and with emotional attunement, help them understand that they gotta obey what we're telling them to do. But most parents are not emotionally available. And when parents are not well, which is a lot of them unfortunately,
A lot of us.
they are a lot of us, yeah, but we're trying to keep you guys thinking of your childhood here. They're physically or emotionally absent, they cause something that we talk about here a lot, which is SEN, childhood emotional neglect. You can write it down, CEN, there's a lot of information about childhood emotional neglect. Now, when there is this type of neglect, our brains are not properly wired. Our brains are creating paths of behaviors. That's what we call neuropathways. And we talk a lot about that a lot here. So when you're a child and your father comes home from work for the first time and he's screaming and yelling and beating everybody up, the next time that child hears the voice of, or the sound of his father coming home, he starts creating a pathway of escape.
Yeah, our pathway was to the bedroom.
So you're escaping. Your behavior is your escape, over and over. It's like it's the ringing of the bell and the dog goes to eat. You have that pathway. Now, this is terrible because we carry it into our adult life, and those paths of those behaviors, those pathways, become our numbing mechanism. We escape to our room when we're little. We escape into being busy when we're older. We escape into porn, into drugs, into shopping, into food. What is your MO is, let's escape, let's go through this, into church, into serving, into being seen, into being famous, you name it. Now, we have been teaching a lot about neuroplasticity. And some people are like, well, what's that? Some of you already know, but neuroplasticity is good news because it means that our brains have the capability of changing those neural pathways that have been created in our minds since we're little into a new one. But it takes practice. It's not just, oh, I went to Home for Life on Saturday, I'm gonna tell everybody to go and I'm not coming back. No, write notes, go back home, read the notes that you took, read it again and again and see, what does this mean? Father, what does this mean? If you don't know how to talk to God, just write it in your journal to yourself. It doesn't matter, but put it into practice. And I have a 40-second video if we can put it, because if you don't put it into practice, you're not going to be able to change those neural pathways. And how do you put it into practice? Every day. If you want to submit to one thing today, and I'm not saying that I'm in authority, but today, because I'm teaching the class, I do have authority in telling you that I have been there of not wanting to do the hard work. And then I've tasted and seen how beautiful and how good it is to do what he's asking me to do.
The hard work is to allow pride to the side and allow shame to come up or whatever it is that is keeping you where you are, and allow the Holy Spirit to do its healing work. That's the hard part. Yeah?
So,
taking the step aside, having somebody else take control.
Every single day. Every single day. Every single day. Every single day. No matter what.
well, whew. So there's healthy submission and there's unhealthy submission. And an unhealthy, what is unhealthy submission? An unhealthy disposition to yield to others. What does it look like? You know?
Codependency.
Buenísimo. Codependency is unhealthy submission.
Don't give me half a speaker.
I can give you half a sticker. Joanna will do that. What does it look like? I'm going to give you some examples, but if you think of something else, you can say it out loud. Blindly doing whatever anyone tells you. Are you a yes person for everything, all the time? Mm-hmm. You are a people pleaser. I think we have, maybe we don't. No. You're a people pleaser, and you do whatever anyone in authority tells you, even when you know that you're not supposed to do it. And it's not just doing something, but sometimes they might ask you not to do something, like don't tell. So when I was younger, I was very close to my grandfather. I loved him very much. And everyone in my family was afraid of my grandfather. That's all I remember. But I wasn't afraid of him. And I was getting ready to go into a visit from Bogota to Cali to visit my grandfather for a long weekend with Chumi and my cousin Hoche. And I got all these instructions from my mother of what I should say and of what I should not say. Don't tell your grandfather that I'm living with William, my stepdad. Imagine, I'm like 7, 8 years old with this huge responsibility of having to be careful if I said that my mother was living with her boyfriend. Because her boyfriend used to work for my grandfather. So here I'm already learning that you have to lie to be able to earn the love and the trust and the respect of your father by watching my mom. And then I have to put it into practice because if I don't do what my mother says, right? So I remember seeing my grandfather and it's like, wow, for me he was like this big man, like he was awesome, he loved me. But I heard all these stories about him that caused so much fear. And I was forced to fear my grandfather, not because he had done anything to me, but because I was told to lie, to not say this, and that's really unhealthy. I had to adapt to an unhealthy form of submission. Does that make sense?
You were given into unhealthy authority, huh?
Yes, I was giving into unhealthy authority. Or in some of the cases of abuse, someone in authority has abused you, and you're told, if you say something, I'll kill you. If you say something bad will happen, right? Many of us have heard some of the stories, we were told to shut up. And we are shut up, and we carry that into our marriages when we're older, we carry that into the churches that we go to, into the workplace, and it's a mess. Because you may not be speaking up, but everything that you do is speaking very loudly. Pain. You could have lack of boundaries. Man, I'm still learning how to put boundaries. Unhealthy submission, a sign of unhealthy submission is that you have a total lack of boundaries. For yourself and for others. You barge into people's conversations. That happens a lot to me here. I'm talking with someone, and then someone comes up and they just start talking. And I'm like me? Not anymore, maybe.
Like me.
No, not like you either. It's the children that are here, those who are stuck in the child stage. And it's fine, we let it happen, but it's like, there's no awareness that you're stepping over somebody's boundaries. They're having a conversation. Wait your turn, wait a moment, right? But then if I don't have boundaries, I won't be able to tell someone, can you please hold on, I'm in the middle of a conversation. I would just let everybody trample over me. And Julie did a great example about 12 years ago. She shared with me this visual. It's like someone is just walking straight into you and you're not stopping them. You're just letting them run all over you. So if you don't have any boundaries, if you don't set boundaries that are healthy, not stonewalling people, you might be expressing unhealthy submission. Your boss, your leader, your pastor, your mentor gives you specific instructions to do something that's going to be good for you. And you either don't do it or you do it your way. Anybody here does that? How many people have heard us talk about the importance of journaling as a method of processing your healing? For years, we've had people say, I bought the journal. What's next? Well, I'm just talking to God in the car. Okay, but that comes after. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Or you're talking to a pastor or a mentor and like, I think you really should go and apologize to this person. And you choose not to do it. Or you just send them a text and the person told you, I think this is a conversation to have one-on-one in person. And you choose to do it your way. Those are unhealthy ways of submitting. You break the law. Speeding, cheating on taxes, lying about paying bills on time. Oh, the check's in the mail. Who has ever done that? Okay, only 2 of us have done that. You have stolen property from a hotel or restaurant as a souvenir. Oh, what a bunch of denial I see here. I've been to some of your houses.
You know, I dry my hands in some of your bathrooms and they say holiday Inn.
I've seen your Ritz-Carlton little soap.
Yeah, you're not raising your hands, come on. Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
that's what, yeah, Didi?
I learned that at home, actually.
To steal?
Yeah, but I took it to another level. Because whatever I learned, I just took it like, on steroids. Like, samurai?
Yes.
They have todos los Judas, the los drinks that they have, and they would just take it like, okay, we came here, it's like a souvenir. We had it in Venezuela, el Hotel Sheraton. Okay, the best friends of my mother and my daddy, Popo, their last name was Sotes, with an S. So we went on one vacation one time, and the guy took everything, it's like, this is the S, this is my name. You know, like that was a joke, it's my, so it's, this is what I learned how to do. You know, it's just, they would always go with a big bag, you know, to the restaurant or whatever, so we can take, even in the samurai, the plates, you know.
Yes.
The whole la vajilla there.
So what has been your samurai moment? What has been your samurai moment? Maybe today you go home and you look around and see, hey, woo, remembering with Chumi, I still have some souvenir glasses from Red Lobster, from the Bloody Marys, with my grandma. We used to put them in our purse. It was funny, but guess what? That's unhealthy submission. I recently threw away, I don't know how many cups
I never
and
thought of
bottles.
stealing as funny.
You saw it as exciting.
Yes.
I thought it was
Yes.
exciting too.
Yes, it is exciting.
My mom did it all the time, and I learned from her.
It's
So-
adrenaline.
The shopping cart is
It's
too long
adrenaline.
for the kids, let's get a towel and put it under the tile, so we walk out the door with the.
With a towel. You see?
I'm really supposed to
I
say
love the
something.
confessing.
Yeah, I think sometimes even when that's happening, you unconsciously don't, like, you actually.
Somebody needs
you are
the microphone here. Who has the microphone? Oh, Sorry.
I was saying, sometimes you're doing those things, but unconsciously you don't really realize that that's happening because you were conditioned a certain way. So for me, in my family, I feel like what they say, everything was done por la izquierda. So, oh, you went over your miles in your car? Don't worry, I'm gonna fix it for you. I'll take it to the mechanic and he'll knock some of the miles down. I have this friend, I have this buddy that can help us, but the buddy would go like, you want cable? Oh, let me rig the thing so I can get you cable for cheaper.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pay the
Oh, you
full
don't
amount.
have Microsoft Word? Let me give you mine.
Yeah, and so when you live in that like normality,
It's normal.
like, and I feel like for me, like, I realized after what, especially like when I had like my lease car, like my stepdad would constantly be like, okay, bring me the car. Like, I don't see the problem, I don't see the big deal. And I felt so bad about it because I was like, I'm lying. Like,
But when he says, I don't see the big deal, he's in a position of authority. You as his daughter, you are to trust him and believe him.
Yeah.
So you are confronted with making a decision right there. Do I submit to his unhealthy authority?
Correct, yeah. And that's why now I'm like, I've stopped kind of like going to them for things because I know like even getting my car fixed, his brother works at a body shop. I don't pay half of what people pay, but it's because there's things happening, you know, and so like,
Conviction is happening.
yeah, so I essentially like I just had to like not
Just
say
confess.
anything and just no, and I am guilty of it because I have done it because it's what I know and
Because
that's
it's
what I always
normal.
did. And he's like, oh, I'm trying to take care of you the way he knows how, but it's not necessarily the healthiest way.
Exactly.
So it's just to say that like sometimes it's normal. And like you feel like it's normal because that's how you've done life.
Yep.
And last thing I wanted to say, and I understand where it comes from them, because coming from Cuba, like that's how you got to do everything. If you want to eat, if you want to do stuff, it's like the black market is how you live. So if you've been raised and conditioned in that, you're not going to see a problem with it when you come to a new country because that's all you know. So just point.
So just
Thank you, Amarili. So I used to do that, and I just want to make a quick parenthesis because I wrote for a living for many years, and I remember I sold, and I used to steal software from Microsoft. Somebody had it, and I said, "Can I have the serial numbers?" "Ah, sure, have it." And I used to think,
Because everybody-
justify it, right? They're making billions of dollars. Who the heck cares, right? That was my thinking. Until I got paid by Yahoo to do articles about Formula One. And I remember writing them and giving them to them, and I would check to make sure that they had been published. And one day I do a search for my last name, make sure that my article was not being stolen, and what do you know? 2 websites had used the same article in Yahoo and they put it on their own website. Nice. So I called Yahoo, and you know what they're doing, you know?
Ladrón que roba ladrón.
And the point is that, yeah, okay, but my point is that it was up until that moment, because it is a terror, right? It's not a tangible, really. You already got paid,
You get paid for that one article, for that one exposition, for the audience of this website. Who cares if they're taking advantage of it? I should be flattered, right? No, wrong. I said, I work for this, and you need to pay the rights to have this article, and they took it down.
Yeah, but if it's the other way, we don't do it.
The point is that until it happened to me, I did it. Until it happened to me, I used to pirate it out all of our software for magazine publishing. And we started sort of like heading back and said, okay, let's pay for this. Somebody work for this.
So
I don't care how many millions or billions you're making, respect it.
What you're saying is breaking the law.
Submit.
Roger, are we gonna be in trouble for saying that we
I'm
broke
just
the
taking
law?
notes.
He's very quiet over there. I'm sorry.
It's going to run down.
So I just wanna say this.
How do you make sure you
We don't realize that we're breaking the law. I mean, how many times you're watching the news and you're saying, how dare they, you know? Can you believe what these people did? And you haven't looked at your own closet.
Yeah.
And what Amaryllis said is like, you don't do it, you don't really realize it because it's normal, because we learned that in our family of origin. But if you are doing these things, you are breaking the law. So if you have a police officer come to your house and ask you, have you broken the law the last month?
I don't answer questions.
We don't pay attention. No, we don't pay attention, guys. So this is not to say stop breaking the law. It's to say, okay, there's a disobedient heart. Where is it coming from? Do you really believe you're in charge because you stole a few cups from Samurai or whatever? We do, you know? Well, because she was saying Samurai, you know. I used to do it. We would have sake, and I don't know how many bottles of sake, and the little cups I had to throw away. I remember I was leaving the restaurant with all of us with our purses, my cousins, clean, clean, clean. And it was funny that we would proudly display, look what we got here. You want to have some sake? You know?
You gotta put the napkin so it doesn't stop.
She's a professional.
All right, let's move on.
So, okay, so you broke the law, and
That makes you rebellious, right?
those are just some of the ways to show what unhealthy submission looks like. Now, what does healthy submission look like? Healthy submission is willful obedience. You do it because you want to. Ashley said it. Lucky suggested something. I'm choosing to trust him as a mentor. I'm gonna do something because I don't wanna do it, but I'm gonna do it. I'm choosing to do it. No one kicked her into doing it. No one manipulated her. She said, no, I'm gonna choose to listen and do it. I've invited so many of you to Hope for Life, sometimes for years, and I've just said, like, they tell me the same problem over and over and over for years. I'm like, do you trust me? Call Lucky. Do you trust me? Come to Hope for Life. You know? Sometimes it's here, they don't trust, so they can't obey. Anyway, if we're supposed to do willful obedience, can we do it alone? We can't do it alone. But not only we cannot do it alone, it has to be from the conviction of the Holy Spirit, or your conscience, or whatever you want to call it. For
Conviction.
me, it's conviction, and conviction only comes from the Holy
From the Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
You want to read the Oswald Chambers, Georgia?
Sure. When I started doing this, when I started in this ministry, in the little room of a, no, not Canaan. When we got started at an office, Blackie, what was that? What type of, this was a preschool?
Oh, Sergio's place.
Right, but what was it?
It was
It was a tutoring
After tutoring school. And we had this little room with little elephants and, you know, and we were talking about death, you know? It just didn't make sense. Something didn't match, yeah?
Yes.
And you brought a book one day, and it was Oswald Chambers. It was the Oswald Chamber of what was it? My Utmost for His Highest. And ever since I've been hooked on that book. You know, it talks about some legalistic things, but you know, read between the lines, and there's a lot in there. And this quote stuck with me, and it reads, when we do something out of a sense of duty, it is easy to explain the reasons for our actions to others. When we do something out of a sense of duty, when we feel that we have to do something, right? It's easy to explain the reasons for actions for others. Well, I had to do it, I had no choice. Oh, okay, you're okay, you know? Oh, I did this because this is what was going to happen. Oh, good. But when we do something out of obedience to the Lord, there can be no other explanation, just obedience. That is why a saint, and we're not calling all of us saints.
It's someone who's transforming.
That is why a saint can be so easily ridiculed and misunderstood. Saint in the sense that you're trying to do your thing. You're trying to do in willful obedience what the Lord is asking you to do, right? And when you do this, you're going to get ridiculed. I used to be the one ridiculing. You know, when people talked about God and talked about Jesus, and they said, oh, praise the Lord and whatever, you know. Yes, Lord Jesus really? Yeah. Well, hold on one second.
Hold on.
And my thing is, at what point do we break from that path that we chose to walk in our lives, that is the pretension life, the false self, the one that we cultivated to do the things that we needed to do and justify every single thing that we've done wrong ever since, while our true self is in the back room there, rotting away because we decided to ignore it.
And I'm glad you said that, because when you're practicing healthy submission, it's not pretending. So when someone has had to pretend to survive an unhealthy authority figure, you pretend. You are unable to be your true self. Pretend. So you become more in tune with your false self than with your true self. You get more in tune with your wound than with your purpose. You see, so like understanding how you're submitting is very important to see how you're going to walk in the light and walk in wholeness, and where you need to start asking the hard questions. A good question to ask yourself: in what areas of my life am I not submitting? And to whom? Sometimes it's even to ourselves, right? George, you want to do the last word, and then we go into your testimony.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to read this. I need to get to my testimony. So when we hear the word submission, it can come across as a legalistic sense of action. It comes as a legalistic sense of action, submission. Yet submission to what our Father is asking us to do is the gateway to a conviction that allows us to put into practice all the things we read about in our healing journey that are so helpful to further our walk. So, because we can read all the books that we want, and we can get all this wealth of knowledge in our heads, and we become very, very good at manipulating if we don't choose to let that go from our heads into our souls and outwardly. So if we stay there, nothing is going to happen. Without healthy submission, those same words we read and hear are just steps to be taken. The confirmation of legalistic and transactional thinking that will get us nowhere, even if at first they serve as aha moments.
We hear a lot of you who have done 12-step programs, which are good. Celebrate recovery, which is good. Therapy, psychotherapy, it's all good. But if you don't put it into practice, and you're here quoting the 12 steps, the tools that you need to use, but you're not using them. It's like me reciting to you the whole menu of a restaurant, but I'm not eating the food. You need to go from knowing the menu by heart to enjoying a good, healthy, healing meal.
No, and people see right through you, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you start reciting and pontificating, and they ask you, well, have you tasted it? And you go, not really, but I know it. So what the heck are you talking about? Yeah?
What are you saying? What are you even living, you know?
I know this fantastic restaurant, but I've never eaten there.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Right. It's just like, okay, great.
We, like he's always asking us, where are the fruits?
Well, Jesus said.
Yeah. Like
No,
he's asking us-
and you know,
and it's true, it's where is the fruit?
but before we even get to where is the fruit, is where is your commitment?
No, when people come here for a year or two
Right.
later, we start saying to you guys, okay, where's your fruit? You can quote me, you can quote the Bible, you can quote, but where's the fruit? No fruit.
With healthy submission, however, those same words and sentences will naturally humble us, what Oswald Chambers said, making us want to follow regardless of what our prideful nature is telling us to do. Right? Putting pride to the side and letting the Holy Spirit do its healing work. It's an easy concept, but man, that's the hardest thing. It has been the hardest thing for me to do, to let go of pride and allow shame to come up and let the Holy Spirit do its healing work. Over and over and over again, daily, moment by moment, traffic incident by traffic incident. Clerk that is being a jerk, clerk that is being a jerk, you know, and I'm getting triggered and I go off the rails and all of a sudden, so where am I? Transactional. Transactional life. I don't want to live that way anymore.
So we just give you a picture of what does unhealthy submission look like, what does healthy submission look like, what is submission, what's the importance of it. And as we transition into speaking about authority, they're all intertwined, no? Because we have to go back and forth. I'm just gonna invite Giorgio to share with you his testimony of his experience with unhealthy authority.
So, before I get started, who's here for the first time? So,
Well, haven't heard Giorgio's story.
well,
Okay.
so, well, the reason I'm asking is because, you know, when I talk about my testimony, when I read my testimony out, it sounds like I have a lot of resentments toward my family. And I did at one point. I did. I had a lot of resentment. When I started doing this, when I joined Hope for Life, I did have a lot of resentment. I didn't know it. I did not know that I had resentment toward my family, but I did have it. And when I started dealing with all the roots, if you will, of that dysfunctional family that I lived in, I really condemning my family. Man, what my father especially. Yeah? I called them every name in the book. I had to go several times to get help because I could not forgive them. You know, we talk about, I forgive you. Yeah, I did that. I forgive you. And 2 days later, I was like, F him. You know? So I did a lot of healing work regarding my father. And today, I remember him with all the love in my life because he was an amazing person who didn't know better.
Yeah.
He was a loving father who didn't know better. He was a survivor that taught us how to survive. And that's amazing what he did, you know? I grew up privileged thanks to him. I grew up understanding right from wrong thanks to him. I grew up knowing what feminism within his chauvinistic attitude, typical of post-war folk, I learned that he was a feminist. He taught me from the get-go to respect women, regardless. And I take that with me today. I'm a feminist because of him. Yeah? So it's been a long, long road, yeah? But it has been symbolized. And this is what you need to keep in mind, yeah? When I read these things, because it's kind of tough on him. But at the same time, I need you to keep that in mind as I read it, okay? So, I've never been so nervous, man, but what the heck? So, unhealthy authority created unhealthy submission in me. I was obedient at home out of fear of the repercussions that came my way
from my father's extreme punishments, both emotional and physical. The physical was bearable, the emotional was the one that really dug in deep to today. So when the opportunity to live away from him came in the shape of an education abroad, I was offered to come and study here in the US. I agreed to it, even when I truly didn't want to leave. I was offered to go to Kansas. Has anybody been to Kansas? Well, Eric has. And look at Eric. Yeah, I love him too. I love him with all my heart. Because he's been to Kansas too.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're down in Kansas.
So,
He clicked his feet.
yeah, I want to paint a real quick picture. So, before I left Venezuela, I used to surf. So I spent every single weekend at the beach surfing. And when I wasn't surfing, I was part of a band. I learned how to play drums, and the rest of the band felt sorry for me. That's not true. They actually knew that I had a place where I could keep my drums and they could rehearse. So they said to me, "Would you like to be our drummer?" And I said, "Yes, of course I would." I know this today. Then I thought they really wanted it, but in the end, they wanted it. Anyways, so I go to Kansas where there is no ocean for about 1,500 miles or something like that. There's winter, there's no beach to go to, there's a lake, Clinton Lake. Was it Clinton Lake? Yeah. Yeah, it had mud in the bottom, it was terrible. Yeah. And the temperature was in the teens during the winter, It went up to 23, 24, I said, oh God, it's warm. So I hated it. But that was my choice. You stay at home and continue to live the hell that I was living in, or come to Kansas and freeze and don't do the things that you like to do and stay here for 4 years doing an education so that you can be as far away from that as possible. I chose that one. And I took a huge decision that truly changed the course of my life, based on a very unhealthy example of authority. I thought I had escaped his extreme, fearful, and oppressive demeanor by running away from home in a very passive and safe way. Oh, thank you, Dad. I'll go to Kansas. In reality, I said, I can't wait to get away from you. So I was deadly afraid of my dad. Far from it. Though my father had offered to take care of myself, for my father had offered to send me abroad, he didn't trust me in my ability to take care of myself. So he demanded that my brother look after me, which made my brother resentful. He's here, he can tell you. Toward both my father and me, because he had been given added, unneeded, and unwanted responsibilities. So he's in Kansas having the time of his life, and all of a sudden the little brother comes in. And this guy is like, what have you done to me, And of course, to his dad, but I didn't know any of this until, you were the one who told me this.
It's having so much fun.
Yeah. It was.
To the 80s.
Yeah, to the 80s.
Wow. To the 80s. Then you should.
Thank you, Lucky. Thank you. Don't help me so much. Yeah, my father used to punish us, and he used to say, I'm doing this because I love you very much. And he would always say, well, don't love me so much. And he would. While in college in Kansas, I fell into a deep depression when my mother passed away at the age of 45. So while being away, my mother, she had had a mastectomy in 1976. This is 1978 that I went to Kansas. And while being there, she got worse and worse and worse. And of course, in 1979, in Thanksgiving, something like that, she passed away, right? So she passed away at 45 years of age. Mostly due to the way that her death had been dealt with at home. So I fell into a deep depression, not because she died. I mean, yes, that's sad, that's terrible.
But what really got me into a bad hole was the way that her death was dealt with at home. Be sad, yes, it's okay, but enough sorrow, enough pain. So in less than a month, I had to move on, have a good memory of who she was, and get on with life. Just like that, you know? Just like, I remember whenever we did something bad to my mom, my father had a little tile. Remember the little tile? In one of the rooms, I don't know where it was. And it started saying, Madre hay una sola, there's only one mother. And then we started bawling, because with his fearful voice, we either, cried or cried. So the message is, he made us believe that our mother was something so unique, something so delicate, something to be cherished and loved, that we felt that guilt inside of having her, because of us, get upset and lose her patience with us. And she had polio, so she was not very strong. Yeah, so it was a very frail presence of my mom. Yeah, so and we took advantage of that when she doubted us. Well, yeah. And then we learned that if we because then she would show my dad, and then my dad would beat the heck out of us for having to go to my mom. So we learned to go whenever my mom hit us, so that we would not get my father's beating. So that's pretension. So that idea that everything was fine after my mother died came out of an image that my father needed to give to the outside world and to himself, really, that we had moved on, that we were all fine. Because the idea of not being fine was viewed as a sign of weakness. And we couldn't possibly have shown to anyone that we were weak men. Truth is, he couldn't deal with his own sorrow properly. So he assumed the same for me and imposed steps to take. In love, but in dysfunctional and unhealthy authority. Eventually, all this undealt pain led me to a place of sadness where I didn't know what to do, because nothing had any sense, had no true meaning. The person I loved the most in my life had gone, and now I had to forcefully dust 19 years of that love. I was 19 when she passed. Under a rug of denial, move on, that decorated a house of cards that I lived in. Move on. I was told to move on repeatedly. I remember trying to reach out to my dad and tell him that I was sad. He says, how long are you going to be sad? Move on, move on, move on. I can't. So I pretended that I had overcome my sorrow, that I had moved on. I pretended I was good at school. I had to. And this is moving forward to Tallahassee. I got kicked out of Kansas. Thank God. So I for one semester, I went back to Venezuela, then I came back to Tallahassee. It was a little warmer, closer to Melbourne Beach. I thought maybe I could serve. I pretended all was good at school too. Why? Because there was absolutely no safety net to express my sadness. I couldn't say I miss my mom. I couldn't. Why? Because guys are tough. Because guys don't cry. Because guys get over things fast. Because guys get up, dust themselves up, and keep going. And imagine the result of this. I miss my mom, therefore I'm not tough, right? I want to cry, therefore I'm not what? Man. I can't get over it. I couldn't keep going. So what was I looking at in myself, right? Doing all this. I was looking at someone who was not a man, according to my authoritative figure in my life. And that hurt. It hurt a lot. What is wrong with me? How come my brother is fine? Because he, on the outside world, he was fine. I don't know what his pain was. I was focused on my pain. And what I was looking at was somebody that had moved on. I remember going to Catholic church in Kansas and feeling so freaking out of place. What am I doing here, you know? But I was looking for help somewhere. How come my dad is already dating? How come life goes on for them, but not for me? There has got to be something wrong with me, right? If everything outside, in the outside world, within the circle of my family is dandy, and I'm the only one here having a miserable time, I'm being extremely sad, what's wrong with me? But I needed to belong. I needed to be part of that image, of that pretension that said all those things that I couldn't be. So in an effort to soothe the pain I was feeling, both for the loss of my mom and for the pain of not being able to be a man as per the figures of man given to me by my father, I reached out to drugs, to anything that could keep me from feeling and thinking about my pain. And I became addicted to all sorts of things. And eventually my life crumbled down. I received a second academic suspension notification from the college that I was attending in Tallahassee. Not FSU, I was not good enough for FSU. I had been kicked out of one university in Kansas, and FSU said, "Oh, we'll wait." So I was like the equivalent of Miami-Dade. Who gets kicked out of Miami-Dade? I did. I did. Anyways, so being kicked out of the university, in other words, being told you're academically suspended, means that I am no longer able to stay legally in the US. As long as I have an I-20, that is the certification of the university that shows to immigration that I have a legal footing to stay here in this country as long as I am studying in the university, is gone. So I have to go back. And guess what? I didn't want to go back to that hell that I had escaped to Kansas. Oh, that's the last thing I wanted to do. But having that suspension exposed my life to my whole family. And that's when they cut off everything. I mean, they just said, come back. You're not, you screwed up. Yeah? Come back. You screwed up. Get back. And I said no. I said no. I knew the kind of life that awaited me there. I knew that it was going to be an unhealthy authority figure that I would have to submit to. Because this man would remind me how much of a little man I was. Because I still hadn't dealt with my pain properly. So unhealthy authority led me to my self-hatred. I hated who I was. I hated the fact that I missed my mom, that years had gone by and I couldn't deal with it. I hated that I was a crybaby and everybody else was not. You know, the idea that I was not a man was really here. I'm not a man, I'm not a man. That's the message, constantly, you know? And that made me hate myself. And you know, and I've told you plenty of times, what that self-hatred manifested in my life. Self-punishment. So soon after being kicked out of college, I get an invitation to work for a family-owned business in Miami. I met this Jewish man, Jewish friend, yeah, who had a publishing company. They're the ones that own the little magazines, tourist magazines called Welcome to Miami and the Beaches. They're in every single hotel here. I don't know if you. Anyways, they wanted a new venture and they invited me to be part of that venture. I went like, yeah, I'll go, another escape. So I pawned everything that I had at that moment. Whatever little I had left, whatever little accumulation I was able to get rid of from my father's support. I did. I pawned my bike, I pawned my stereo, I pawned most everything that I had. And with that money, I moved to Miami. So without thinking anything else but the escape, the opportunity of being on my own representative, I accepted. Now,
At 22 years of age, I had truly run away from home. I mean, I had run away from home. I said, no, I'm not going back. I'm sorry, take your money, stuff it, I'm out. And yeah, I mean, that's not what I said, but. And of course, they would tell my brother, what's wrong with your brother, you know? And he would write to me. My brother, I gotta give it to you, man. He always kept in touch with me. He would write me letters. I still have them from my college days. I kept them all. I still have them. And he kept me company. I never wrote back. Very rarely did I write back to you. But he kept writing. I don't know why, because I would have given up. So thank you for not giving up. Yeah? The business venture that this family had did not work at all. And it was a disaster. They hired me. Can you imagine the mess? I was a college dropout. I had no professional. No, the truth. I had no professional background whatsoever. First job ever, honestly. I had done office work while I was in Venezuela during vacation, summer vacation, in Metropolitan Insurance. Yeah? And that was it. I never really known what it was like to make a living. All of a sudden, here I am, So this thing didn't work. And in one of those I know someone who knows someone moments, I get hired to work at Diario Las Americas, which at that time it was a Spanish language newspaper. It was like the largest Spanish language newspaper in the US. And I'm like, great, what a nice landing, Nice landing. And there, I met another authority figure, my boss. And he became my mentor for many years. Very knowledgeable, very savvy, but also very dysfunctional. He was unfaithful to his wife openly. Yeah? He invited me to business lunch meetings at nude bars, Pink Pussycat, in 36. At least once a week, I was sitting there having lunch. You question the quality of the food in these joints, right? And I was there because I was bending to unhealthy authority. If I do this, then I'll probably be in his grace, and he will look well upon me, what I'm doing, and I'll get further. That was my thinking. Well, it was the normal thing, and it continues to be. You've heard Lucky tell his stories about his days in Hong Kong, how he used to wine and dine his clients. Right. Yeah. And like he treated most everyone with disdain. Yeah, that's what you said. I'm just quoting you. Right. Screams and disrespect. No one was right except him, even if he wasn't. Because it's weak to be wrong. His words. I saw myself becoming self-sufficient though. I went back to college. Went to Miami Community College. I was climbing up. I was considered and assigned to higher positions within my trade. I started rubbing shoulders with my childhood heroes. I used to read Popular Mechanics when I was a kid. My uncle had a collection, and he had it pasted up in book form of Popular Mechanics magazines from the 50s. Yeah? And they had Charles Atlas as the advertisement. I remember that. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting now as a journalist next to these people that I used to read about. Rubbing shoulders with them and C-suite executives, trying to present my product to them, being successful at it. I had really worked on my false self. I really put on the hard work, pretending, having the demeanor. It worked. I was really good at deceiving people into doing the things that I wanted them to do, business-wise. What I did with that is a different story, but I was good at that. In my book, I had become a man, finally. I was tough. I had made it on my own in a foreign land. That's something to be proud of, right? And I had moved on. I had finally gotten up dusted myself off and kept going, just like my father and brother had done, or appeared to have done, way back when in 1979, 1980. I did not need drugs anymore to bury my pain because it was all gone. Let's say that I had managed to properly brush it under that rock of denial that I talked about earlier, because I never truly dealt with it properly until a few years ago when I started coming here. So pretensions die hard. When I was in second grade, I was a little skinny. I'm going to tell you this story because this is important. I was little, I was skinny in second grade, and you put a picture once, and I don't know what happened to that picture. When I'm getting a diploma, and I have a suit, and the tie is right here, you know, the suit is small or huge, I don't remember, but I'm looking at it, it's like, who is that pathetic kid, you know? No, but seriously, yeah, looking at the image, it was like, you know? And I became very easily embarrassed too. I was petrified of my dad for many reasons, and I'm not going to get into them now. But let's just say that my demeanor, the image that I projected for my dad was so pathetic in his eyes that I had no credibility, none. Even when I was telling the truth. I had to lie to him, pretend, until he heard what he wanted to hear. And this is a quick story. Some of you have heard it. I was in second grade, and we used to, back home, there was a morning session for school, a break for lunch, and then afternoon session. During the break, we lived like so close to the school. We would walk up to school, to our home, have lunch. You had a chance to see a couple of TV shows, and then back to school. So that was the routine. Out of school, up to have lunch. Before lunch was ready, I would watch Superman in black and white. Yeah. And one day I go up, and as I'm walking to my room to drop off my school books, I see a huge black stain on the tile floor. I didn't make sense of it, you know. I says, oh well, whatever. And I kept going, and then I was, you're laughing. Then I went back I went to the television set and I sat to watch Superman. And then my father comes in, and I hear his voice, his stern voice, calling us both. So we go to be summoned to the altar of the Almighty, and he said, "Who did this?" And I look at the stain, and I didn't do it. And he looks at my brother and says, "Who did this?" My brother says, "I didn't do it." Just divine intervention that, you know, that stain appeared. So my brother turns to me once, my dad turns to me once again, and he says, "How do you do this?" I look at him and say, "I didn't do it." "How do you do this?" "I didn't do it." And this was close to Christmas, so he says to me, "Until you tell me how you did this, there will be no Christmas gifts." I know, but I didn't do it. I mean, I really, truly hadn't done it. So I started burning stuff and just put it into the ground. This was afterwards. We all went to lunch, went back to school, and I'm thinking, my Christmas gifts, well, what can I do? So I started in the afternoon after I came back from the break, for the end of the day, I started burning stuff on the ground to see if I could replicate the same burning stain that was there. Pathetic, right? What was my thinking? If I tell them how I did it, I'll get my Christmas presents back. It was no longer about, I'm telling the truth. It was like, how can I lie to this guy so that he can give me the credibility that will allow me my Christmas presents back?
Right.
I burnt everything. Nothing was, plastics, papers, you know, carbon, remember carbon papers? In my time, I would burn carbon papers in there. I remember it vividly. And nothing, and I was frustrated. And my dad, every single time, would ask me at dinner time, "So, are you gonna tell me how you burned that? How you created that stain?" Okay. Totally afraid. And I continued to try until one day, my brother sees me trying, burning stuff, and he walks past and says, "Try toilet paper," and he just keeps walking. Footnote. You're laughing because you knew that it was him, right?
Yes.
I didn't know this until I'm telling the story to my wife, to Gigi, 30 years later, and she goes, your brother did it. And I'm going like, what? This is how naive I was, you know? I thought my brother was helping me, and through all of my eternity up until that point, I had thought that my brother had really helped me find a solution to getting my Christmas presents back. And it was him, son of a...
Are we going to have a class together?
Yeah.
You and your brother?
Probably one day.
You forgive him?
Oh, I already forgave him. Yeah, no, that was... I called him, you know, and he didn't even remember the incident. You know, and of course, you know, memory knows certain steps and he remembered. And we laughed it off, you know, we're older, it's okay. You know, at that point I probably would have hit him, which would have been useless because he was so much bigger than I was. That, you know, anyways.
Different now though.
Yeah, you're right. But I don't have to use that anymore either, so I hear you. I could not wait for my dad to get home. I mean, I remember sitting, watching television, listening to the sound of the door opening, you know? Is he back? Is he back? He's there. I ran to him and I said to him, I know, maybe before he even said anything to me, I said to him, I know how I burn it. I know how I burn it. I know how I burned it. I know how I did it. He said, okay, tell me. And I told him, and he said, don't ever do it again. He's like, I didn't get my gift. I don't remember what else happened, but I had Christmas presents that Christmas too. Yeah? So, my main figure of authority at the age of 8 was telling me, no one believes you even when you're telling the truth. What's the message? Lie. 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 So I became what I needed to become in order to be a believable person. First and foremost, before my father's eyes, and before everybody else's too. Why? Because the unhealthy figure of authority told me loud and clear that it didn't matter if I told the truth, what mattered was how I told the lie. But pretensions die hard, just going back to almost present tense. Behind closed doors at home, when no one was watching, the same old Giorgio still existed. In my fragility, in my thin skin, in my insecurities, in my dysfunctions, and in my little presence. So when I was idle at home and no one was watching, I was doing everything that I could do because no one would find out. I was watching porn almost every night. I called the 900 numbers that offered sex live talk, which is the precursor to today's like sex videos. Remember, guys? No, it's nobody's gonna visit. Yeah, thank you, Gilbert. I love that. Yeah. You remember it too well. Yeah, that's right. I coerced my first wife to watch porn with me, coerced her to live out my sexual fantasies. I would scream at her at the top of my lungs, just like my father screamed at me at the top of his lungs. I won every argument that took place between us, just like my father won every single argument that took place between us. And between my mother and my brother too. I remember waking up the very next day after I got married, thinking, what have I done? You know, the ball and chain mentality. Ball and chain. Yeah, first one, not Gigi.
The first ball.
Yeah, my first ball. That's funny. Over the years of healing and through my journey toward emotional maturity, I called her, I reached out, I spoke to Gigi and I said, this is what I want to do. You know, I never been to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was not looking at it as a step in my healing. I saw it as a conviction that I needed to fulfill. I had a conviction in my heart that I needed to talk to this woman, and I apologized to her. Why? Because
I had given to her a screwed up example of what a man should be to a woman that had none. Because her father had abandoned her right after she was born, once. And then again years later, when she tried to reach out to him and she rejected him again, he rejected her again. Today, instead of thinking, what have I done? I'm thinking, what was she thinking? Marrying someone like me, And I'm not, panning it up here. It's just a reality. So like my mentor in business, I had become very knowledgeable and savvy in business, but also very dysfunctional. I used the same questionable tactics and practices that I had learned from him, and dismissed anyone who was a threat to my authority with extreme judgment. And Gigi knows stories about how I would, because I have told you guys before, I lived a fraudulent business life. So when somebody tried to expose that, I would attack until submission. Yeah? That was my only escape, the only way. I was not willing to listen to anyone anymore. I rejected any authoritative figure, male or female. But I reserved a very special place in my heart for men in authority. I had developed extreme hatred toward men abuser. There's a term for that. It's called misandry. Yeah, for men. Misogyny is for women, misandry is for men. Yeah, so I realized that I couldn't relate to most every man, mostly because I had never come to terms with the undealt pain created early in my life when I was forced to lie in order to be the man I needed to be, but wasn't and couldn't be. And pretend that all was well when in reality everything was horribly wrong. So what happens when I'm pretending to be somebody that I am not, and I get all these friendships, and I told you this before, all these friends coming over, trying to talk and trying to connect. Nothing happens because they're reacting to something that I am not. They're reacting and they're giving me feedback according to the false self that I'm presenting myself out to be. So whatever it is that they give me has absolute zero meaning.
No value.
No value whatsoever. So now you understand why I thought everyone was an idiot. They mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah? And I'm angry and I'm resentful and I'm sitting there in the judgment chair going, what an asshole, what a jerk, what an idiot, what a moron. What a fill in the blanks. No, it's really fill in the blanks, Contempt for men. I got along with women. I could not, because they didn't know me very well. Once they saw through me, it's like, For men? You know that the word pretend comes from a Latin word that implies stretching. That's the origin. We're pretending, we're stretching the truth. It makes sense, right? Yes. What happens when you constantly stretch something, like the rubber bands? Breaks. Eventually it breaks, right? I snapped, I broke after my father died. My father died many decades after my mom in 2007. And once that unhealthy figure of authority died, so did my need to be someone other than myself. Yeah? It's like, he was gone, and all of a sudden, I was sad for him. He had moved to Costa Rica, escaped in Chavez, and he lived out his last years there. And I remember going there and saying goodbye to him, and this man was unable to cry. I was telling him things from the heart before he passed, and I could see that he was trying not to give in to emotion. And I'm thinking, man, you're dying. It's okay. Let go. Let go. He couldn't. And post-war, he went to World War II. Boys don't cry. What are you gonna do when a bomb is falling in your place? You're gonna cry? Do something, right? You wouldn't cry. I saw him cry once when my mom died. That's it. Never again. I
think you saw him probably more than once. Right? Once. So my need to be someone other than myself went away with his death, but I didn't know how to be myself. I had no clue what it was like to be myself. No idea. Zilch, I mean nothing. I was lost. I was totally lost. And I was 27, I was 47 years of age. Lost at 47.
So that's an identity crisis.
Absolutely. I froze. And it started this lack of knowledge of what to do, a very slow but constant downward spiral. It lasted 3 years. And during that time, I stopped covering the industry that I worked on as a journalist. I stopped showing up at the CNN studios every week. They even came to get me on limos, you know, we need you. I stopped writing. And eventually I ran our business to the ground. And just like I didn't know how to deal with the loss of my mother and my father, I did not know how to deal with the loss of everything else in my life. I couldn't deal with the shame of failure. I couldn't deal with the shame of bringing my family down. I couldn't deal with running my marriage to the ground. Everything came crumbling down. Shame, shame, shame. So that's what I was feeling, total shame. Yeah? To give you an example, we went from paying my daughter's school for a full year in advance to take advantage of the discounts to having to beg the school to allow me to keep her at that same school at a lower rate. I went from traveling the world testing amazing cars and writing about them to driving a beat-up truck delivering frozen food to senior citizens for $11 an hour. I pawned everything of value that I owned, used up all of our savings, and ended up with absolutely nothing. Everything I had feared the most in my house of cards had become a reality. And at that point, I wanted to end it all. I wanted to kill myself. I always talk about small moments here, because we tend to look at bigger pictures. But I always talk about focusing on the small moments that are happening to us on daily life, because that's where we find a lot about ourselves. The big moments, great. That's like getting a big account, but it's the little accounts that support you in the end. Yeah? And we tend to think about small moments in our lives as simply just that, one instance that might have caused some unwanted moment of discomfort, but that eventually we outgrow. Not true. Those small moments cause trauma that for decades goes unresolved and creates huge wounds that are never resolved either. So they grow and grow and grow and grow until life becomes riddled with that wound. In my case, the trauma caused by the wound of not being the type of man that to my father's eye was worthy of his trust. That was the trauma. A simple and seemingly insignificant, but enormously impacting judgment call that taught me loud and clear as a young boy, you're not believable, the toilet paper event. Seemingly insignificant. I laugh about it today with my brother. Yeah? Small moment. It forced me in unhealthy submission, right? I lie back to him, and they believe my lie. To become believable before the eyes of an unhealthy authority figure. I did everything to be believed by a dysfunctional authority figure in my life. Unhealthy submission. And it almost cost me my life. That little insignificant moment of the toilet paper on the floor almost cost me my life 40 years later. And we think, oh, you gotta put things behind, you know, why are you focusing on such a little thing? No, man, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. The bigger moments you probably already dealt with because they're huge, they're apparent, and they're like slapping you in the face. Deal with me, you know? It's this ones, these guys.
that come up out of the blue, because this one came out of the blue. So unhealthy authority led me to wanting to kill myself. Not drugs, not alcohol, not porn addiction, not out shopping, not gambling, wherever it is we believe we're here for. It was my self-hatred born out of that unhealthy authority that led me to some of the darkest hours of my life. Remember that I've told you before, I came here because I wanted to kill myself? But my need to be that autonomous authority in my own life brought me to the point where I finally couldn't trust myself in making the right decision. I have fought all my life to be in control of my own circumstance. And all of a sudden, 35 years, 40 years later, I'm realizing, man, what a waste. I don't trust myself in making the next step. I can't. I'm not safe. I'm not safe. Imagine the inability to move forward. Where do I go? But I have finally landed. Finally. It's like, you know, the realization of all this, it's a relief at first. There's good news and bad news. The good news is you can do something about it. The bad news is that many people tend to stay in this hole because it feels comfortable. We feel comfortable in our own misery because we can point the finger at everybody, you know, like I am here with my father. But to understand that I am responsible for my own actions, to understand that I can do something about that, to understand that there is a way out of this if I want to, because I've always had the ability to say no and just stay there, right? We know people like that in our lives, don't we? They forever fuck up, you know, we still look at him 30 years later and he's still the same guy and never changes, still screwing up in life, right? And we're judging him. Obviously, he has his own set of wounds, but he's chosen not to deal with them. He's there. The true reason I came here, unbeknownst to me then, though, was because I needed to find out who the real Giorgio was. My true self. That's the good news. I didn't know that that was going to be my journey when I came here. I wanted to die. I really didn't want to. This is why I came. But my thought process was, I need to end it because I don't know how to deal with it. I froze. I didn't know what else to do. Yeah? My true self. I needed to find out who my true self, and I found that out here as time went by. I needed help because I didn't know how to go back to second grade. I needed to go back to that day in the toilet paper incident. To realize that all the stuff I ended up believing was a true lie. I needed to do that. I needed to deal with all this. I needed to condemn my dad. I needed to forgive him. I needed to remember him in the good standing that today I remember him. In other words, I needed to heal my wound that he created 40 plus years ago. 42. No, I'm 62. Sorry. You do the math. That's what I ended up writing. It was a lie that I believed for so long that it led me to a huge, 50-year. It led me to a huge 50-year downward spiral until I finally decided to let someone else live my life. So, there is healing in this process. There is revelations that cause pain in this process. And as we work it out, it stops being a process. We come here reading. We come here learning. We come here wanting to apply what we read and what we learn. But as time goes by, we realize that this stops being a process and it becomes a life. It becomes a way of life. It's become a way of life for me. I am trying my best to constantly be aware every single day
Awareness of every single decision that I'm making. Awareness of every word that I'm expressing. Awareness of how I say everything. Awareness of the body language. Not because I'm being self-conscious. It's totally the opposite. I'm getting rid of all the things that I became. So I need to be conscious of what I need to get rid of in order to allow the true Giorgio to be out and about. And that takes practice, because it was so buried that I thought it had really gotten rotten. That's not the case. There is plenty of life to live today. There's plenty of joy. Even in that job driving the truck at $11.50 an hour, I told Gigi, this is the best job that I've ever had. Because of the revelations that job was giving me. All these revelations, all this humility, letting go of the pride. The amount of times that I cried in that truck out of humiliation. When one day I knocked on one of those doors that I used to knock on, and who opens the door but a colleague of mine? And I'm wearing a little hat, and the uniform, and the shorts, and the bucks. I'm looking at this guy that used to be my colleague, my parallel. And he's going, and this is where he went. Oh my God, and that was like the worst thing that anyone could have ever said to me. Yeah? And I gave him the box, and I think to myself, screw you, man. If your mother is getting this food, it's because you are in deep trouble too. So long. That was my justification for feeling the way that I was feeling. The reality was, when I went into my truck, I started hitting the steering wheel, I started crying. Shame. Shame has been the biggest, most difficult emotion to overcome in my life. Yeah? So I think that we want to stop it right now, yeah, because I cannot keep going, man.
Yes, right? I agree. He has to hear it again.
Wait, can you say that again?
No, he has to hear what you said.
Say it again.
I said, I don't give compliments.
No, before that, say the compliment.
In your life, and your brother thinks so too.
Oh, good.
He's whispered something. Act of courage.
No, you know what was more courageous than this? A long time ago, my brother, he's 2 years older than I am. And I don't know why we were playing at home at an empty field, remember? Near home at an empty field. And it had like an incline, so we were all up here on the incline, and at the bottom of the little cliff, there was like a small step in there. I don't know what it was, but that's what I remember. And it was my brother and a friend of his and me. I always wanted to hang out with my brother because I always looked up to him. I still do. He is an amazing bike rider, man. It's like, yeah, amazing. And I have pictures, I'll show you. Anyways, they were playing with the rocks, and they go, why don't you go down there and catch the rocks, And I go, yeah, they wanted to get rid of me, and that was the easiest way for them to say, let's get rid of this asshole, So, sorry. So I go down there, and I started trying to catch the rocks, but it's like all of a sudden I realized, this is bad. So I'm not trying to catch them anymore. I'm trying to, evade them, dodge them. And one of them just sinks me right in the head, And I started crying, and head injuries, the blood is like spectacular, So I remember me being taken to the hospital for a couple of stitches, and me crying at the top of my lungs, and my mom running, my dad carrying me, of course, like a little bag. That was courageous, going down there and trying to catch the rocks. But thank you.
Yeah.
Moments that we remember fondly, you know, because those are, no, I do remember that fondly, you know? Yeah? Yes, yeah.
We are gonna continue the class next week.
What time is it?
We're gonna go into, it's 1. Sorry,
You were
it's
right.
12:53.
Yeah, you told me, yeah,
Thank you for sticking out until this time, guys. But I wanted to tell you, Giorgio, I really like this Giorgio that I'm meeting now more than the one that I met 24 years ago.
What?
It's the real.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also, had I been the one I was back then, and I would have met the real Giorgio, I wouldn't have liked him, because I was very dysfunctional. So I really like you though.
Thank you, babe.
Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
So guys, we will continue, we'll talk more about what unhealthy and healthy authority looks like, and we have an exercise for you guys next week to do. It's gonna be awesome. Don't miss it, and we'll see you next Saturday.